Today, we're going to talk about a guy who was like the absolute master of waiting. His name was Simeon, and his story, which you can find in the Bible, really teaches us something huge about patience and what it means to hold on to a divine promise.
So, let me just kick this off with a question for you. Seriously, how long would you wait for a promise? I mean, really wait? A month? A year? How about a whole decade? That's kind of the core of what we're digging into today, that really tough challenge of keeping faith when you have no idea what's coming next. All right, let's just jump right in. So the man at the center of all this is Simeon, and we meet him in the book of Luke. The text describes him as this super devout, righteous guy living in Jerusalem. And his whole life, his entire existence, basically boiled down to one thing: waiting. You know, the scriptures make him sound like he was just always at the temple, a real fixture there. But this wasn't just some routine. No, he was there on a mission, a divine one. He was waiting to see what the Bible calls the consolation of Israel, which is really a powerful way of saying he was waiting for the Messiah, the one who was prophesied to bring comfort and deliverance to the people.
Okay, and this is where the scale of his patience just blows your mind. The Bible doesn't give us an exact number, right? But based on historical context and what theologians have pieced together, it's suggested that Simeon waited for something like 30 years. 30! 3 decades. That is practically a lifetime, all spent holding on to just one single promise.
So you can kind of break his whole journey down into these 3 parts. First, he gets this divine promise. Then comes the super long, probably really tough, period of just waiting. And finally, right near the end of his life, boom, the promise is fulfilled in this spectacular way. This was no sprint, It was a total marathon of faith.
So the big question is how? How did he hold on to that hope for so long? How did he put up with a wait that, let's be honest, would probably break most of us? Well, the scriptures give us some clues. It seems like there were 3 core pillars holding up his faith. Let's really get into the character of this guy. We're going to look at his incredible faith, his profound humility, and of course that divine promise that was literally the foundation of his whole life. And you'll see, these 3 things aren't separate. They're all woven together, each one making the other stronger.
Okay, so first up, faith. And what's so fascinating is that it wasn't just, blind belief. It was more like a kind of spiritual insight. He had this ability to see the deeper meaning in what was happening around him, even when, on the surface, it looked like absolutely nothing was going on.
Next, we've got his humility. The Bible calls him righteous and just, and that's a huge clue. It tells us his long wait at the temple wasn't for show. He wasn't trying to get status or some kind of reward. Nope. He was just driven by pure reverence, No ego involved. And it's that humility that let him wait so quietly without needing a pat on the back for being so faithful.
And that brings us to the third and maybe the most crucial pillar, the promise itself. The book of Luke just lays it out there. The Holy Spirit told him straight up, "You will not die until you have seen the Messiah." So this wasn't just a wish or a hope, it was a flat-out divine guarantee, a personal promise that gave all that waiting a real purpose.
So imagine that, decades of waiting, of quiet faith, of humble devotion, and then it happens. The moment finally arrives. Let's get to the climax of his story, because it's pretty powerful.
So, Mary and Joseph show up at the temple with baby Jesus. To anyone else, they just look like a normal family doing a normal thing. But Simeon, guided by the Spirit, sees something totally different. He sees the extraordinary. He looks at this little baby and recognizes him as the Messiah, the fulfillment of everything he's been waiting for. Just like that, his wait is over.
Can you imagine that moment? It's just breathtaking. But this story is so much more than just a historical event. Simeon's quiet life is packed with lessons that are just as relevant for us today. So, what can we really take away from this lifetime of patience?
Well, there are 3 big takeaways here. First, real faith isn't a one-time thing. It's a long-haul commitment that demands patience. You got to persevere. Second, humility is key to that perseverance. It's what keeps you going when you feel like nobody notices or when things aren't happening on your schedule. And the third big one? God's plans often work on a timeline and in ways we just can't see coming.
And that last point is so important. Think about it. We want our plans to be simple, right? Linear, A to B to C. We want instant results that make sense to us. But Simeon's story shows us a completely different model. It's about a grander, more complex design that unfolds on its own schedule, in its own surprising way. It's a huge lesson in trusting that the payoff at the end is worth the long and sometimes confusing wait.
So what Simeon's story really challenges us to do is to loosen our grip on our own timelines. To let go of our own expectations. It's pushing us toward a deeper kind of faith, one that isn't about getting quick, easy answers, but is about a quiet, patient trust in a plan that might just be way bigger than anything we can imagine.
And that brings us right back to where we started, but with a whole new perspective. Think about your own life, right now, your hopes, your faith. What promise are you waiting for? What's the thing that requires that same kind of deep, patient trust that Simeon had? It's a really powerful question to think about. Thanks for exploring this with us.